Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Paradigm Shifts podcast with your host, Keisha Kruger. I'm an organization development practitioner and executive coach, working with leaders to create positive changes in the workplace using behavioral science. My personal mission? Share science-based tools and leadership insights from the field that you can use in the workplace and beyond. Considering we spend about 3/4 of our lifetime at work, there is incredible science and organizational psychology that can be used to rethink the way we work, lead, and ultimately live. Join me as I speak with thought leaders and business leaders in practice, unpacking light bulb moments for paradigm shifts. Hey everyone, on this week's episode, I was so fortunate to sit down with Robin Gargano to chat about resiliency in the workplace. Robin is a resiliency transition coach and strategist, a best-selling author, impact speaker, proud mama, wife, and has been featured on media platforms such as Forbes, New York Weekly, Huff Mag, Yahoo, Fox, and both national and international news broadcasts. After living in the darkness from multiple tragedies, Robin is driven to help athletes find their resiliency by harnessing vulnerability to find strength, as she has done. Robin is the CEO of L4, Live in Life, Love in Life, where she helps turn suffering and adversity into strength through resiliency, leadership, and mental performance training. Being a former athlete, Robin is passionate about giving athletes a seat at the table to change the narrative of what it means to be the mentally tough. By knowing the individuals, she builds congruent teams. By training the communication style of the coaches, she builds a fluid development program. For more information about Robin and all of her services and her work, be sure to visit the show notes. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, please, please, please. We've got some incredible guests like Robin, and I can't wait for you to hear them. Thank you. Hello, Robin. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing so great. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being here. I am personally excited to chat with you because we're going to talk about resilience today. And if there's anyone who knows about resilience, it's you. I mean, you are a resilience transition coach and strategist, and that's such a cool career. And I bet there's just like an incredible story behind how you got there. Would you be willing to share a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. There is a story. Of course, I fell into this path of work and it was birthed from tragedy.
Right.
And so growing up, my brother and I were adopted from birth. We had a wonderful childhood growing up. My brother did get into substance abuse. So that was a tumultuous time in our life, but beautiful life all the way around. Fast forward to college, met my husband. We got married, tried to have a family, and unfortunately suffered like 7 miscarriages along the way, which ultimately led to a separation at the end of our marriage. And as we were trying to pick up the pieces of what that looked like, he was traveling for work and he was coming off the second to last leg of his trip home and he died in a plane crash. The plane hit an apartment building and he had passed away. And after the miscarriages and my husband, it was a deep dive into the darkest place that you can possibly imagine. It was can't get off the floor, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. When I did sleep, it was basically passing out from pure exhaustion. The body couldn't handle staying awake anymore. Lost a drastic amount of weight. And for an Italian who loves to eat, not being able to eat is shocking to the body. So the body went into shock. And then I lived in that space for a while, destructive, feeling all of the emotions of what is this? Didn't find, the support group outside of my beautiful group of support that I needed. There wasn't a lot of that I could reach to, but thank God I had my tribe, my family. Without them, my backbone would not have been there. Like they held me up into everything that I am now. Like I wouldn't be at this place without them. So after that, I discovered my journey of healing and what that looked like and tried everything under the sun to get better, feel better, learn to live again. I say that death really taught me how to live. So my husband's death really taught me how to live a beautiful, free life.
Right.
And then fast forward again. So there's a lot of fast forwards in this story. My brother had a baby girl and she was born. And unfortunately, him and the girlfriend that he was with, she ended up being an opioid abuser. So he wanted to get out of that situation as he's trying to clean up his life and be a dad. He was living in Idaho at the time, and he moved back to Florida. He was very, very sick, onset cirrhosis of the liver. And about a month after he had moved back, he ended up passing away in his sleep. So there goes the effect, everything all over again. But I almost felt like this time I was more prepared, if that's even a thing, if you can even be more prepared. But I was strong for this little girl. Before he had moved home, him and his girlfriend actually ended up getting pregnant again. That baby was born, and I ended up flying to Idaho and got emergency custody of her. She was addicted to opioids, and we spent 17 days in the NICU as she detoxed on a Q4 morphine drip, and then took her home. And a year to the day before she became 1 year old, the mother relinquished her rights, and I adopted these baby girls, and I became a mama. And now I have a beautiful new husband who gave me two beautiful stepdaughters, and I'm a mom of four, and I have the life that I'd always dreamed of in the complete opposite way in which I thought that I would get it. And that is my beauty and tragedy.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start with that. I mean, wow. I'm in awe of your strength, the grit, the resilience, to the numerous examples of adversity that you've had to face. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, of course.
I want to pause. Anyone who has just heard this and they feel like, oh, I can relate, or I've had a string of tragedies that I'm unsure how to turn into opportunities, or maybe I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. What's something that you can suggest they do right now?
Give yourself the grace of time, right? Understand that your journey is yours. You can build resilience. Even when you feel like you can't, that's okay. Everything is okay in your process. That's a number one takeaway of no matter what you feel, what you say, how you act, it's just okay. Believe in that, and believe that the time is yours to take however you want to take and use it. So step one is just being okay. Step two is knowing you have a luxury of time. And then step three is knowing that you will get there, and you can get there if you ask for help and just dig deep within yourself.
Good. Sounds like your support system was so critical in your healing journey.
Yes. I mean, it's one of the tools that I give my clients of, if you don't have a support system like I did, you get to go out and try to find that group, whether that's through a church or a grief counselor or a therapist, or there's so many different virtual groups now online that weren't present when I was looking for them, that are beautiful groups that you can go to. If you don't have that support, you're lone wolfing it. Yeah. And as we know, right, something great that the pandemic taught us was lone wolfing our lives, not having that social interaction and that community really does a detriment on every part of our being, our health, our mind, everything around us. So connectivity in a time of despair is so important.
And so in terms of resilience, if you could give it a personal definition, like how would you define it then? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, to me, resilience is choosing to fight for your life. It's making a decision that you deserve to move forward. Whatever your tragedy, your circumstances, that doesn't define you. It's a part of you that gets to grow with you and evolve into different things. So resiliency is using adversity as your best friend, right? The challenges that come into play are meant for us. They're imperative to our existence, right? We can't understand joy if we don't understand pain and really accept that pain. So resilience is acceptance, it's discovery, it's evolution, and being open to all of those things in order to change you into a different version or better version of yourself.
There's so much, there's a lot of paradox in your story and also in the healing journey, right? You don't know, you can't know the beauty until you've accepted the pain. All of these little instances where you've had to surrender and let go of control throughout your healing journey because it didn't necessarily align with what you thought your vision for your life would be. But in the end of this beautiful story that you share, you got exactly what you wanted and what you had asked for, but in a different way. So how did you get yourself to um, let go and surrender control?
That word, you took the word right out of my mouth. It's surrender to your opportunity. So a lot of people take that word and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to surrender that. I'm giving up." No, you're surrendering to this new path. This, you know, Jesus take the wheel. If you're a spiritual person, like lean into that. And that's what I did. I was like, you know what? I don't know where I'm going. I have no idea what is this? What is this reality? Like everything is crumbled and crushed, right? That's what you feel like. You feel like the whole world just crashes and your heart is broken and ripped out of you. So it's surrendering to, I have no idea what's going to happen, but all I know is that I deserve to be here. And all I know is that my life is a gift and I'm going to figure this out because as human beings, we are resilient. We can grow. That's the purpose, right? That's the purpose of education. And this life is meant to give us so much. So that's what I said to myself. I'm like, I don't want to feel like this forever. I want to smile and really smile again. I don't
It
want it to be this fake persona. And that's what got me to the next level of
really,
discovery and understanding how to educate myself on what healing is, right? Because we need intentional tools to figure out what that means. You don't just become healed. So
yeah.
that's what got me to that next level of surrendering.
Y- You had to get to that point where you said to yourself, I just don't want to feel like this anymore. I just don't want to have my life like this anymore. I want to be able to feel pleasure and joy and happiness and laugh again and smile again. It took time to get there, right? So you can't expect this to happen overnight. The healing process is a journey, as you say.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And you get to have grace with that too. So my whole thing is like learn to have grace with yourself. Learn to that you're going to feel really awful for a really long time and sometimes a lot longer than you think. But
Very.
again, that's okay. Everything about this is okay because that pain is teaching you something. We don't want pain, right? We don't want to have it, but it is really detrimental to how we can evolve, how we can understand life. But
Mm.
yes, it takes time. And that's why I say give yourself grace and the luxury of time to each year, each day, each month, each year, each decade, you're going to learn more from where you came from.
Mm. The question that you kind of hit on that I think is critical to ask in a reflection period during a healing journey is, what is this pain teaching you? Because I think often when we find ourselves in situations of adversity, we can easily slip into the questions of, why is this happening to me? Why is life crumbling around me? Why me? Why, all of those questions that are absolutely valid because of the pain you're going through, but an opportunity to evolve and adapt to become more resilient to the situation would be to ask yourself, what is that pain teaching you, right? What is this showing me that I need to know and need to learn?
Exactly. And that's such another great point that you bring up is that why question. When
Good.
it comes to pain and healing, it's really unnecessary. You're not going to get the answer, right? Especially in a tragic situation, which most of these things are, right? When you suffer a tragedy or something very unexpected, the why is unnecessary. You may never get your answer. And is the answer important, right? And then we go
Good.
into this self-sabotaging mentality. Then we fall into guilt. We fall into victimhood. All of these things. It's like, you know what? I can't understand this, nor do I need to. All I need to do is take from this person, this instance, whatever it is that's lost or has happened, and make it work in my life right now in the most grounded, positive way that I can. So the why, don't get stuck in the why.
Mm.
In this instance, right, which is totally opposite of a business instance, right? You need to know your why. But in this instance, the why really becomes unnecessary. It's how am I choosing to live now? And how am I choosing to heal?
And choice. Such a powerful um, thing to remember here is that we have the choice. We don't have to choose to suffer. We can choose a different way. I love that you say, like, how do I choose to do this? So for those listening, they're like, wow, we just talked about like adversity and pain and resilience. And I imagine that you've taken all of this amazing knowledge and wisdom and you've transmuted it into a science that you can apply to help people in the workplace. Tell me a little bit about that and kind of the science behind resilience that you've learned and how you've been able to help organizations and leaders in the workplace with resilience.
Yeah. So the science behind resilience is people think you're either born with it or you're not. And that's just untrue. So resilience can be trained, it can be taught. Now, if you want to geek out a little bit, there's these studies that have come out over recent years saying that there is a gene variant that some people are born with that constitute more resiliency from birth. But that's just a little geeky thing that's fun to learn about. There's proven factors to build resiliency. So when we go into corporations and companies and we're trying to understand, what's the gap in here? Like, what's missing? Why are people not feeling so resilient or supported in this way? And that leads into a whole other slew of topics of how businesses can truly support in this way. But you're going to work in like 10 pillars, basically. And these are proven factors of how we can build resilience. So before I just go into those really quickly, even if let's say you're a parent right now and you're trying to build your own resiliency, the sooner that you can learn and step into that motion and train your children how to do the same thing, the better they're going to be equipped and set up to handle obstacles and challenges. So The earlier we learn how to handle adversity, the better off we're going to put ourselves into this position. But if you're just getting into this world right now, like, how do I do this? Like, where do I start? You're going to start in something that's just grounded optimism. So grounded optimism is based in positive psychology, and it's using pillars and tools to understand how to combat, use, and then use to your advantage these challenges, right? There's no cure, quote unquote, to the problem. There's just improvement, right? It's like a troubleshoot. So you're going to work in grounded optimism. So then we go into facing fear, right? We want to understand what fear is all about and where it comes from. That's a big part of how we gain our resilience, is understanding why we have fear. Then you're going to go into following your own moral compass, whatever that looks like. What's your moral compass? You're going to stick by that. What's right and wrong? Spirituality and religion, right? If you are a very religious person, lean into that. If you're a spiritual person, lean into that. And then the next pillar that you're going to want to look at is your social support, like we already talked about the importance of that. And then physical fitness. You build resiliency by exuding those endorphins that we need, right? That dopamine. And so you want to remain in a healthy pattern. You want to remain as a healthy person so that you're releasing all the good chemicals that we need to think and flow in that way. Have emotional flexibility. Another pillar. We want to be emotionally flexible, right? Now the term is your emotional intelligence, right? Your EQ. We want to really understand what that means and follow that compass. And I could go off on a whole tangent on emotions, which maybe we will in a little bit, but we want to be flexible and understand and listen to our emotions. And then find your meaning and your purpose in your life now. If something has happened and you're trying to transform and transition, what's that new meaning? If you're just going into resiliency because you want to learn how to build that, do you have a meaning? Do you have a purpose? What is that and what does that look like? And those are 10 scientific proven pillars of what will help build resiliency. And then also, this is a term that people don't know that much, but hardiness is a way in which we can measure resiliency. And so there's 3 components of hardiness that we can monitor. And you measure this through what's called an HRG assessment gauge. The Hardiness Resilient Gauge. It's been around for 30 years. It was created by Dr. Paul Bartone, genius mind. And you're measuring control, challenge, and commitment. And then you get an assessment that grades you on a scale of 1 to 130, and you can see where you land on that subset and how to build from there. And that's something that we provide as a service. I'm certified in that. And so we can provide this gauge and then give, consultations on what you can do to improve all those 3 subsets.
Wow. I love geeking out on this podcast and talking about this science. So you just brought it all to the surface. We're all about surfacing science here because that helps us break down the real construct, right? Because it's hard to make it tangible sometimes when you think about these constructs. And you take resilience and you break it down into these 10 pillars that are scientifically proven ways to build this as a muscle, if you will. Starting with the first one, before we go into anything else, that's got to be the hardest one, right? Because it's probably like you're in a baseline below sub baseline where you're just like, okay, I need to make this first step to work in grounded optimism. Can you just give me an example of what that looks like?
Absolutely. What it is not is having a fake persona of what positivity is. So it's not like,
Good.
I'm happy, like I'm so happy. It has nothing to do with that. So we're grounding in a choice to use a specific tool. And the one that I love to use the most is called positive reappraisal. So, and the example that I use with this is sometimes a universal thing that most people feel. Like, let's say you've been on the road traveling airplanes for weeks, you're just about to go home, your flight's canceled. And like, typically the first thing that people are like, oh my God, I just want to get home. Frustrated, probably a bunch of curse words are coming out. Like, I don't want to stay another night. Okay, so what would I do to make this situation advantageous to me? What would I do to give myself an opportunity? So everything in life is about an opportunity. So we're going to ground ourselves in, this is an uncontrollable. I can't do anything about this. Why am I going to fight it? So what can I do? I can go to the restaurant that I wanted to that I didn't get to. Maybe I have a friend that lives close by. I can visit him or her. I can go back to a hotel room and I can take a bath. I can read a book. I can go to bed early and feel rested because I don't after this trip. I can drive around and sightsee and discover new things or meet new people. I'm not going to change the situation, but I can make it work for me. Another example is people always get stuck in traffic, right? And they're so mad about getting stuck in traffic. Well, that traffic could have saved you from an accident that was 2 miles down the road. You never know, right? How do I reappraise my thoughts? And then that's a behavioral change, right? You're not going to get it right away. It takes practice. You're grounded in the intention to practice using a tool like positive reappraisal to understand that everything's an opportunity for me.
I love those examples. So the tool is a positive reappraisal, and that's really the first step is training that, getting familiar with how to reframe things as opportunities when they're not going our way, or maybe they're not going the way we had envisioned. And I love that you say this isn't uncontrollable. Is it in my control or is it not? Right? Asking yourself that. And if it's not in your control, what can we do differently to make it advantageous to us? So cool.
Exactly. What's the one thing you can control? Yourself.
Always.
Right.
Always your response to things, right?
Yes.
I love that. Thank you so much. And then also the hardiness tool, that's taking it a whole other level.
Yeah.
So if possible, then, and you've done this a lot with organizations, how do you suggest organizations and leaders build or support building resiliency on their teams? Like if they're saying, okay, I think we need to do some resilience building, where do they go first?
Yes, absolutely. Every leader in every organization should really sit down and streamline a process for this because, people want to feel supported. And if you don't feel supported in your organization that you're putting all this time and effort in, then you're not going to give your all. You're not going to give your best because you're unappreciated. And then you're like, well, I'm not going to do this. Like nobody's caring about my well-being. So the importance of this is a true leader, right? What can I do? So we want balance and we want education. So in my humble opinion, I feel like leaders should fight for the personal freedom of their associates. So examples, if you're a parent, a leader, an employer should be like, listen, you're never going to miss a game. You're never going to miss a recital. If there's something in the middle of the day for school, go. That excitement, that support that child feels from you being there is the most important. That fills your soul and your heart to get back to your job because you were able and allowed to do that. So fight for that. Fight for the openness that you can trust. You've hired the right people to get the job done. knowing that they can create their timeline. Then, if this is a big one, but I used to work for a company called JM Family, and they really were a family, and they had a salon on site, they had a doctor on site, they had a gym. So we could go and get our nails done, our hair done. We could go get our physical exams for every quarter. We could go work out, because it was important that these things that are errands weren't being taken away from our off time, our personal time with our friends, our family. Now, not every place can do that, right? Not every company set up for that, but you can allow for those things, right? Again, have you trusted who you've hired? Allow for people to go off site and get what they need to do, life stuff done, and then come back and feel refreshed. Also provide educational training in mental health practices. So you can do executive function and self-regulation skills programs, which is it's mental processes and practices that help people how to teach themselves how to plan, how to focus their attention, how to remember instruction, juggle multiple tasks, things like that. Like provide those types of tools that you can teach people how to expand their ability in the workplace, and then hire a mental skills team. Or if you have a psychologist that's on site, utilize them more. But a mental skills team is different from a psychologist in some regards, because we're not diagnosing people. We are coming in and we are saying, here's tools, here's actionable steps. Hire a consultant like us to come in once a month, once a quarter. Everybody listen, create profiles on your employees so that they can understand themselves. Tools like that. Then nutritionists, inspirational speakers, things like this. Provide well-being aspects for people so that they feel supported in all areas of their life. And then, if you can, provide a comfortable break room where you're given true breaks, 20, 30 minutes at a time. Go read, listen to music. We all need to shut down our sensory brain, right? That sensory rest we need. We need emotional rest, creative rest. We need social rest. If you can provide that in the workspace, your productivity level is going to go up tenfold.
Both. There's a couple things I want to go back to, but before that, I want to ask a question. Why do workplaces need to be doing this? Wouldn't the argument be that we have this training, we have these skills earlier on?
What if you don't? What if people haven't been predisposed to something like this? What if there's been so much developmental trauma in someone's life that they aren't equipped? There's so many different avenues that we've come from that I feel now it's an employer's responsibility to really lead with compassion, to really lead with, this is a human being that has chosen to work at this establishment. What can I do to make that experience better for them? What can I do to give a full congruent life to them, right? People, the balance, right? People have such a hard time with balance. We all do. I do. And this is a space I work in regularly, and we have to really work on that balance. So it's, you would probably know this better than me because statistics I always have to refer to, but we spend, 70% of our life working or in the office.
I was just going to say, you're speaking my language, because the whole premise of this podcast is that you're absolutely right. Like, the employers have responsibility, businesses, leaders, they have responsibility and an obligation to create the environment where employees feel supported and that they can get back, right, to the company. And well-being is so crucial. And to your point, they didn't get this. We didn't always get this. Not every single person got this when they were in those developmental stages at home. And maybe they still don't have it at home. But if we're spending 70% of our lifetime in the workplace, we have a real opportunity here to create an environment that will have a significant carryover effect into our relationships at home, to the children that we're raising, to the people that we are involved with outside of work. So it is a contagion, cascading effect. And so you're speaking the language here. Absolutely. You talk about mental health as if it's commonplace in organizations. And because you do this work, you're seeing probably a trend in organizations adopt more well-being practices and more mental health opportunities. And I know also in the research and just looking at things that are coming out, there is more opportunity that is becoming available and organizations are adopting it. But there's still a stigma, right? There's still a stigma as it relates to mental health and talking about mental health and being vulnerable about that in the workplace. So what is your opinion on that and like how someone can make a difference in breaking that down?
Yes, I'm so excited about this question because we've come a long way. We have come a very long way in the mental health world, but now I almost feel like it's turning into noise a little bit, right? There's action that can be taken. So let's make that action now, right? We're talking about it, which is fantastic. Thank you for talking about it, right? But let's make the talk super important. So one person can create a ripple effect. One person can touch millions. One person can inspire. And so how do we do that? We do that by being vulnerable. And that is such a scary word to people. Like, I don't want to share too much, especially to my coworkers. Well, you don't have to share everything, right? It doesn't have to be like that, but it needs to be something along the lines of, let's create a space where we can have a conversation that doesn't always just dwell in work. Let's learn about each other. Hey, I used to have this fear, or this is how I overcame that. Whatever the conversation is, create a space where that's okay, because then your associates will bond on a completely different level that will open up the doors for a more resilient workplace, because you are layering all the importance of how we are as humans at the surface. So why do we have such a hard time sharing our emotions? Why are we so afraid of them? It's the one thing that connects us all. We all know what joy and happiness and pain feel like on different levels, but we all get that. We all know what it feels like to cry, to love, but yet we're so like, I never cry, or whatever it is that you say, or that the story that you run. When people can bond on just being a human, it creates an open door to discovery. It creates an open door to fulfillment. It's how we understand how to live and to live freely. And that's the key, right? When we don't live in our emotions, and when we put them in this little box and we're like, I'm not going to talk about this, we're basically caging ourselves inside of our own being and saying, I'm not going to live the way that I deserve to live. No, open up the cage, fling it far open, and say, I'm unapologetic about my depression or my pain. It came from somewhere. And if I talk about it, I'm going to educate somebody else. And they're going to educate someone else. And then it's going to be an open conversation. So let's remove the stigma of emotions and allow that to be a human thing. Let's just be okay with it. And the difference that you'll feel just in the workplace alone, you're showing humanity, right? You are showing the rawest parts of yourself. How can you not bond with another human being? And let's just say, right, because this will happen, of course, you're going to share something and someone is going to be super judgy. Okay. What is that, right? That is a mirror for them to look into and reflect back to themselves of, why is that triggering me? Why is that? Why do I have such a strong opinion on somebody else's viewpoint? That's something they get to look into internally, because it's none of your business how they view you, right? And so who cares? Judgment is we use it as such a mask. I mean, I used it for so long. I was like, I don't want to be judged by that. Who cares? You're going to get judged, but it doesn't matter to you. It doesn't matter to your growth. The growth you experience from that is, how do I overcome that judgment? How do I overcome that opinion of not letting it intrude into my heart?
Showing up as your full self, as your authentic human self, is something that we chatted about on a previous episode. Kim Curley talked a little bit about vulnerability and how when you don't do that, you're showing up with a mask, right? And you're not conserving energy, you're expending energy, because think about how much energy it takes to be someone else, to not be your full self. And so when you're really connecting and showing up in the workplace as your authentic self, as you're saying here, helps break down that mental health stigma and also creates that ripple effect to inspire others to participate in conversations that are really valuable for others. The cool thing about all of this is that you can choose what you feel comfortable disclosing and what you don't, right? We're not saying you have to broadcast out to the world if you have, you know, um, a certain disorder or something like that. Choose what's comfortable for you. But we're talking about here is sharing your emotions and not putting them in a box. It's saying today I had a bad day, or this morning I a string of things has really made me feel a little bit off, and I'm not showing up fully present to this meeting, and here's why. And being able to disclose that without feeling like you got to bottle that up, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's exactly correct. And when somebody does come to you and shares in that capacity, especially when it's your associate that's coming to you, your director or manager or, upper management, let's hope and pray that that person has had some level of compassion given to them and that that's what they are protruding back into the workplace, because a true leader leads from compassion. A true leader leads from vulnerability. And if you don't lead from that place, you're a dictator. I'm sorry, but you are, because we are meant to connect. We are meant to bond. We are meant to feel appreciation and be guided and have support. And if your leader isn't doing that, you're in the wrong place. And they're probably not a very effective leader at all. I mean, I love all the men out there, but why are women-run businesses so uber successful, right? Why do you hear Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, say that his women-run businesses are head over tails cap his male-run businesses? Because women know how to come from a nurturing place, and we use that as a superpower because it is, right? Compassion and vulnerability lets us expand our horizon to understand this is a human being that needs me right now. And whether that's a hug or some time off, I'm going to give it to them because they're going to come back refreshed. And so women understand that this is a true way to lead and lead to scale, right? You're not going to scale a business if you don't care about the people that are helping you do it.
So true. So true. We're going to talk about benefits of resilience in just a moment. But the other factor or thing that you had mentioned that I think is critical to touch on is the comfortable break room. I know you said it as like a third point, but there's more to it than that, because when you talk about being able to give some relief to your sensory systems, right, that have been on overload, we're talking about playing essentially. And so I want to use that word play because I think we talked about this before. What does it mean to play in the workplace, and what can leaders do to support more play?
I love play. Everybody should play. And think about it. How did we come into this world? We came into this world learning through play. That's how we grow up, playing games, understanding concepts, how to tell time, whatever it is. That's how we grew up. Why do we get so far removed from that as adults? Like we think that that's not important anymore, right? It comes back to a basic principle of, the simple things in life truly do matter. And when we make those things an important factor in our businesses, we make everything important in our businesses. And I'm telling you, the leaders that I've worked with and talked to over the years that have made play a priority have head over tails scaled their companies 10, 20, 30 fold, because it again goes back to that whole thing of that I care that you are having fun here. So the break room is just one example, right? And that leads into the break room leads into giving ourselves that rest that is needed to produce productivity. So rest, and we could talk about like 7 different types of rest and all, when I kind of went through a little bit of them, but nobody gives enough credit to that. Okay, if we don't rest, we will never perform physically, mentally, anything, because that needs to be important. The breakdown of the brain will completely deteriorate if we are just like pressing down on it consciously and continuously. So it has to take a nap, right? It has to break down a little bit. So that break room is super important for all these.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
I think an effective leader gives permission to their associates to rest, right? Because a lot of times, like high performing or high achievers on a team, they might never give themselves permission. I think an effective leader creates that space and invites individuals to take rest.
It's So true. And if I can just digress for 1 second, we work with athletes and we work with major league and pro athletes. And it's amazing to me how the balance of the physical performance to the mental performance is still really not there. And so when we open up an athlete's mind to, you're going to go into a nature spot and you're going to journal, and we give them homework and we put new routines in place for them to utilize, a couple weeks later, not even, maybe a week later, like, I cannot believe how my physical body is performing now. I said, yes, because you don't need to train for 6 hours at a time. Your body will become automated just because you gave it the rest that it needs to recover in order to produce your elite talent. That's the same in anything across the board. And it's like this light bulb goes off of, I never knew that I needed to like rest and be okay. Like you said, the permission to rest. And it's like, I feel better as a person. Like, I'm happy. I'm playing again. And it's like, yes, this is the balance of life. But play in and of itself, excuse me, for a job in the workplace is, it increases job satisfaction. It increases productivity, creativity, well-being. It encourages that level of social engagement and interaction. Because if we don't do this, if we don't create these social bonds, right, then there's that breakdown of a team. And then we go into fatigue, burnout, stress, boredom, unhealthy habits, unhealthy eating habits. You can't function like that. You can't function in any way like that. So why would we be able to do it in the workplace? So it's funny because people are like, well, what's the example? Like, what do you do for play?
Yeah.
I was like, you have rolling chairs in your office, literally getting those chairs and you each roll down the aisleway. Something as simple as that. You can do retreats. You could do games in the office, right? Make time for that. Make it an important thing. But people are like, that is so crazy. And I said, you know what? Yeah, but who cares? Like, it's fun. You're allowed to have fun and work and be a full person.
It reminds me of like those team building events that everyone's like begrudgingly going to, but then you get put into this group with a team and your challenge is to create the highest structure, and you've got pasta and marshmallows and all of these things, right? And you think it's so silly, but once you're doing it, you're having fun. And you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Actually, we have fun. We learned, we created some sort of a bond together as a team. So I know there's every people out there like naysayers, like, oh, play, workplace, try it. Give it a try. Don't knock it until you've tried it, right?
Exactly. And if you have that thought that comes into your head, like, there's a reason you're having that thought. What is your opposition to it? Why is that your first instinct? If you've never tried it before, open up your mind. Try. That's how we learn. That is how we evolve. But that's a number one like discovery tool is if your initial reaction is to kind of step back and say, I don't really like, that's not for me. You never tried it. How do you know if it's for you?
But yeah, what is that telling you about you and your perception of that, right? What is that internal dialogue or narrative that's going on around that? Such a really cool self-reflection practice as well.
Absolutely.
So we talked a little bit about the benefits of play, but going back and circling into resilience, when we talk about those 10 pillars and the different ways to build resilience, why would organizations benefit, or how would they benefit from creating resiliency systems, if you will, in that workplace?
Your productivity levels will soar. That's hands down across the board. If you build resiliency in a person, they will learn how to manage and mitigate stress. They will learn how to have proper communication skills, because in resiliency, we learn how to openly communicate with people. And if I'm not being heard correctly, it's okay, let me approach that in a different way. So now you're openly communicating so that all your points are landing. Stress levels are down. So that means all the serotonin and all of the chemicals are flowing in a way that your creativity from building your own resiliency is going to provide different options and answers to the growth, scalability, whatever project you've got going on, that outside of the box thinking, sort of that guerrilla marketing tactics. You are opening up doors of discovery within a human being that they might have found limiting. So we've all heard about like our limiting effects on ourselves, and we are. Just as human beings, we think very small. We think like, oh, I have a dream, but that dream couldn't even surpass anything, or it can, I'm sorry, excuse me, it can surpass even our
And
biggest thought that we have, because we're still limiting ourselves, right? I want to stand on top of the world, but I'm probably just going to go over here and stand in this corner for a little bit, and I'm going to fulfill that dream. And then I'm going to get to the next dream. You become limitless in your capacity to understand your own leadership. So as you're building resiliency, you're building leadership within yourself. And that isn't that dictator leadership that we were talking about that no one wants to be. That's a compassionate, vulnerable, productive, creative, vulnerable, open human that their brain is now firing on all functions, on all cylinders to be like, I can do this. I can do this job well. And I want to be at work. I want to be there. And when I'm happy to be there and I'm producing and I'm getting this acknowledgement back because I've been trained on how to be resilient, thank you for giving that to me. Now I'm coming home and I'm giving that to my family. And that's how the web separates and goes out to everybody else. So now I can inspire my family. I'm happy at home, or I'm happy or single. Here's how I'm going to inspire my friends. Here's how I'm going to start XYZ in the community, right? It's just somebody caring enough to care about you, and then you care to spread that joy. And that's why building resiliency in the workplace is so important. You're creating that ripple effect in the world, that impact.
Yeah, we all know the benefits and the gains from having an engaged workforce. I mean, resiliency leads to engagement. I mean, you want your people to want to show up, and when they do want to show up, think about how much energy and attention and discretionary effort they're going to be putting into the job and just making it a better place. And that's not even taught. We haven't even hit on, okay, if you're an attractive place to work, how many more people will want to come work for you? And we're seeing challenges with, scarcity and talent and finding people and finding qualified people to work for businesses. So if you haven't really heard the message here, the message is get resilience in your workplace. And I'm going to drop a ton of information in the show notes about Robin and her services. So if you are asking yourself, how do we get this work done now, today, yesterday? All of that will be there. Don't worry. So you can check that out and reach out to her on her website and email and things like that it's linked below. I have one final question.
Yeah.
Everyone's used to this by now. What's the most recent paradigm shift that you've experienced?
So the most recent shift that I experienced was really kind of my own transformation in understanding. And when I say recent, it's really been over a decade, but it feels recent to me. It's the shift of understanding what transformation does to the body, the mind, and then seeing that shift in the world. So I've loved seeing how, resiliency and mental health has become a priority and a shift, right? I feel like that shift happened in the last 3 years, particularly. I feel like it's been a major shift of understanding, the brain, the science behind the brain, and how making that transition of understanding is so powerful in the world. But the shift I want to see, I'm going to add to your question is, I want to see this shift where people are looking at functional energy medicine as a way of well-being, and how when we listen and understand our own science, right, we stick together through energy. That's how we are a form of a human. And when we understand that, we will grow so far beyond us. We can heal ourselves better. We can have better mental health when we understand the physics that come with energy and the science of that. I want to see that shift. I want to see that shift come into play of leaning into a science that's been around for thousands and thousands of years, but that people really poo-poo and are like, that's so woo-woo. Yeah, no, it's not. It's science, and it's based in science, and it's based in this grounded level of really understanding what energy is and how powerful it is for literally everything we do. If we listen to our bodies, right? We listen to our pain points and we listen to this, we're going to listen to everything else in our life a lot better. So bringing that shift, I want to see that as this next big forefront of, wow, we've really neglected, the physics behind this and how we can heal and grow our bodies, our minds, our physical beings, everything, our medicine, the practices that we do. I want to see that.
I want to see that as well. And I already know you're leading this ship. So we're going to continue plugging in these areas. And I'd love to see you back for another episode. We could talk about quantum physics or any of the functional energy medicine topics that you'd like to chat about, because I also see that the shift that you've been talking about in the recent years, but I also see a need for some of those other shifts that you're talking about. And so I'm rallying behind you, and I am excited to see what's on the horizon.
Thank you so much. Well, my business partner, Anne-Marie Lafferty, and I are pioneering an effort to make that, on the forefront of people's minds and to really keep pushing the mental health practices of what's important for our overall well-being. So we're excited, and thank you so much for having me on today and sharing the space with me. And I think that you're just such a beautiful human being, and I'm just so blessed to know you.
Oh, thank you so much. I cannot wait to continue our chat. And if anyone has questions for Robin or additional comments and wants to learn a little bit more about what she means when she says functional energy, feel free to leave a comment on the video. Thank you, Bye, Robin.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to leave a review, rate, and subscribe wherever you're listening. If you know a business leader in practice or friend who you think would be interested in this episode, please consider sharing it with them. I am so grateful for your support. For more updates, you can follow us at Paradigm Shifts Podcast on Instagram. See you on the next episode.